Book of Heaven, Volume 8, Part 4. May 3rd, 1908. Effects of the circulation of the divine will in the soul. Continuing in my usual state, I felt our Lord near me for just a little, and he told me, "My daughter, with the soul who does my will circulates in her whole being like blood. So she is in continuous contact with me, with my power, wisdom, charity, beauty. She takes part in all that is mine. As she no longer lives of her own volition, her volition lives in mine. And as mine circulates in hers, hers circulates in all of my being. And I feel her continuous contact. And as I feel touched by her continuously, you cannot comprehend how drawn I feel to love her, to favor her, to answer her in everything she asks. If I denied it, I would deny it to myself. Besides, all things considered, since she lives in my will, she asks for nothing but what I myself want. This is what she wants, and this alone makes her happy, for herself and for others, because her life is more in heaven than on earth. This is the fruit that my will produces, to beatify her in advance." May 12th, 1908. With their bad example, the rich have poisoned the poor. Continuing in my usual state, I was praying to our Lord that he would concede to put peace in the hearts that are all in discord. The poor want to attack the rich. There is such turmoil, a thirst for human blood. It seems that they themselves can no longer contain themselves. If the Lord does not put his hand in, we are already close to the chastisements that many times he has manifested. Then he came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, a just justice mine is. The rich have been the first to give a bad example to the poor, the first to move away from religion, from fulfilling their duties, to the point of feeling ashamed to enter a church, to attend Mass, to perform their obligation. The poor have nourished themselves with their poisonous slobber, and having fed themselves well with the poison of their bad example, with that same poison given by them, unable to contain it, they try to attack them and even to kill them. There is no order without subjection. The rich have subtracted themselves from God, and the peoples rebel against God, against the rich, and against everyone. The scale of my justice is full, and I can no longer contain it." May 15th, 1908. She sees wars and revolutions. As I was in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, in the midst of revolutions. It seems that they are ever more obstinate in wanting to shed blood. I prayed to the Lord, and he told me, "My daughter, two are the storms that men are preparing, one against the government, and the other against the church." In the meantime, I seem to see fleeing leaders, the king at risk of being made a prisoner and trying to flee. I cannot say it well. It seemed that he was falling into the hands of the enemies. All the rich were undergoing grave dangers, and some were dying. That which was most sorrowful is that among the leaders of revolutions, also against the church, priests were not lacking. Then, when things were reaching the extreme excesses, a foreign power seemed to intervene. I shall not continue further, because these are things said other times. June 22nd, 1908. The divine will triumphs over everything. This morning I was feeling very oppressed because of the privation of my adorable Jesus, and I said to myself, I cannot take any more. How can I go on without my life? What patience it takes with you! What would be the virtue that would induce him to come? At that moment he came and told me, my daughter, the virtue that triumphs over everything, that conquers everything, levels everything, sweetens everything, is the will of God, because it contains such power that nothing can resist it. While he was saying this, a road, all full of rocks, thorns, and steep mountains, appeared before me. Once all this was placed in the will of God, by the power of it, the rocks were pulverized, the thorns were changed into flowers, the mountains leveled. So, in the will of God, all things have one same appearance. They all assume the same color. May his most holy will be always blessed. June 31st, 1908. The true spirit of charity in the rich and in priests. Continuing in my usual state, full of bitternesses and of privations. After much hardship, I seemed to see peoples in the act of rebelling and of intensifying the brawl against the rich. In the meantime, the lament of most sweet Jesus made itself heard in my ear, all embittered, saying, I am he who is giving freedom to the poor. I am tired of the rich. They have done enough. How much money wasted on balls, on theatricals, on useless trips, on vanities, and even on sins. And the poor? They could not have enough bread to satisfy their hunger. They were oppressed, weary, embittered. Had they given them only what they spent on unnecessary things, my poor would have been happy. But the rich have kept them like a family that did not belong to them. Even more, they have despised them, keeping comforts and amusements for themselves as things befitting their condition, and leaving the poor in misery as something befitting their condition. And while saying this, he seemed to withdraw grace from the poor, and these would become enraged against the rich in such a way that grave things would happen. On seeing this, I said, my dear life, and my all good, it is true that there are some bad rich people, but there are also some good ones, like the many devout ladies who give alms to the churches, and your priests who do so much good to all. Ah, my daughter, keep quiet and do not touch this key, so very sorrowful for me. I could say that I do not recognize these devout ladies. They give alms where they want, to obtain their intent, to hold people at their service. They spend even thousands of lire for those who sympathize with them, but then where it is necessary, they do not deign to give a cent. Could I say that they do it for me? Could I recognize these actions of theirs? You yourself can recognize whether they do it for me from these signs, if they are ready for any bare necessity, if they do not differentiate by giving much where it is not so necessary, and refusing to give little where it is necessary. One can well say that there is no spirit of true charity or upright operating. So my poor are put into oblivion also by these devout ladies. And the priests? Ah, my daughter, that is even worse. They do good to all. You deceive yourself. They do good to the rich. They have time for the rich. By them also the poor are almost excluded. For the poor they have no time. For the poor they have not a word of comfort or help to tell them. They send them away, reaching the point of pretending they are ill. I could say that if the poor have moved away from the sacraments, the priests have contributed to this, because they have always taken their time to confess them, and the poor grew tired and no longer came back. But then, if a rich person would show up, it is all the opposite. They would not hesitate one instant. Time, words, comforts, help. They would find anything for the rich. Could I say that the priests have a spirit of true charity if they reach the point of picking the ones to whom they should listen? And what about the others? They either send them somewhere else or oppress them so much that if my grace did not help the poor in a special way, the poor would have been banished from my church. True charity and upright spirit, only rarely do some priests have them. But as for the rest, I could say that these have departed from the earth. I remained embittered more than ever, imploring mercy. July 26, 1908. Obedience. Continuing in my usual state, Blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, obedience is the ark of my dwelling in the soul. Where this ark of obedience is not present, I can say that there is no place for me in that soul, and I am forced to remain outside." August 10th, 1908. The Work of Love. Continuing in my usual state, but full of bitternesses and of privations, after I received communion, I was lamenting to Blessed Jesus about the way he had left me, and about the uselessness of my state. And he, having compassion on my laments, told me, "My daughter, nothing has diminished the goods that exist between me and you, because the whole of good is in the origin of its foundation. When two persons unite themselves with the bond of friendship or with the bond of marriage, and they have exchanged gifts besides, and have loved each other so much as to become inseparable, to the extent that one has taken and copied the other so much as to feel the being of the beloved within herself, if, out of bare necessity, they are forced to be far away from each other, are those gifts perhaps diminished, or does their love decrease? Not at all. On the contrary, being far away makes them grow more in love, and makes them keep the gifts received with greater care, waiting for some greater unexpected gift at the return of the other. But there is more. Since one has copied her beloved within herself, it seems that there is no distance for her, because she feels the voice of the beloved flow within her voice, having imitated him. She feels him flow in her mind, in her works, in her steps. So he is far and near. She looks at him, and he escapes her. She touches him, but cannot clasp him. Therefore the soul is in a continuous martyrdom of love. Now, if justice forces me to deprive you of me, and to be far away for some time, can you say that I have taken the gifts away from you, and that there is diminution of love? And my state is too hard, my dear life. And what am I here for, if you do not let me suffer to spare my neighbor the chastisements? You have said many times that you would not allow rain, and it is not raining. So I cannot beat you in anything. Whatever you say, you do. While if I had you near me like before, I would tell you so much that you would let me win. How can you say that distance is nothing? And it is precisely because of this that I am forced to be far away, so as not to let you win, but give course to justice. However, by keeping you here, there is also some good, because the lack of water shall call for famine. During this time the peoples shall be humiliated, and after slaughters and wars have taken place, grace shall find them more disposed to be saved. Is this not also a good, that while wars were about to overtake the famine, by keeping you here they shall be postponed for a little longer, and so more souls shall be saved? Then he added, love never says enough. Even if love scourged the soul and tore her to pieces, those pieces would cry out love. Love never says enough. It is not yet content. It pulverizes those pieces. It reduces them to nothing, and into that nothing it blows its fire and gives it its own shape. It mixes nothing human, but only the divine. It is then that love sings its glories, its braveries, its prodigies, saying, I am content. My love has won. It has destroyed the human and built the divine. It happens to love as to a talented artisan, who, having many objects that are not to his liking, breaks them to pieces, puts them on the fire, and keeps them there until they melt, making them lose all of their shape. And then he forms from them many other objects, most beautiful and pleasant, worthy of his talent. It is yet true that for that which is human, this action of love is so very hard. But when the soul sees her gain, she shall see how beauty has taken the place of ugliness, richness of poverty, nobility of roughness, and she too shall sing the glories of love. August 14th, 1908. The human will serves as brush for Jesus in order to portray his image in the heart. Having received communion, I could see the baby within my interior, as though looking for something important. And I said, my pretty little one, what are you looking for with so much zeal? And he said, daughter, I am looking for the brush of your will, to be able to portray my image in your heart. In fact, if you do not give me your will, I lack the brush to be able to portray myself freely in you. And just as your will serves as brush in my hands, love serves as colors, in order to impress the variety of colors of my image. Moreover, just as the human will serves as brush for me, my will serves as brush in the hands of the soul, in order to portray her image in my heart. In me, then, she shall find abundant color of love for the variety of colors. August 19th, 1908. The soul must sow good with her whole being. Having done my meditation on the fact that the one who sows good shall harvest good, and the one who sows vices shall harvest evils, I was thinking about what good I could sow, given my position, my misery, and inability. At that moment I felt I was being harvested, and I heard him say in my interior, "The soul must sow good with her whole being, with all of it. The soul possesses a mental intelligence, and she must apply it to comprehend God, to think of good alone, never allowing any bad seed to enter her mind. And this is the sowing of good with the mind. The same with her mouth. She must never sow any bad seed, that is, bad words, unworthy of a Christian, but always say holy, useful, and good words. So here is the sowing of good with the mouth. Then with her heart, she must love God alone, desire God, palpitate for Him, and tend to Him. Here is the sowing of good with the heart. Then with her hands, she must do holy works. With her feet, she must walk after the examples of our Lord. And here is another good seed. On hearing this, I thought to myself, so in my position I too can sow good, in spite of my extreme misery? But I thought of this with a certain fear of the account that the Master shall ask of me, whether I have sown well. And in my interior I heard him repeat, "My goodness is so great that great wrong is done by those who make me known as severe, very demanding, and rigorous. Oh, what an affront they give to my love! I shall ask for no other account but of the little field given to them, and I shall ask for an account for nothing but to give them the fruit of their harvests. I shall give it to the intelligence, for the more it has comprehended me in life, the more it shall comprehend me in heaven. And the more it shall comprehend me, the greater the joy and beatitude with which it shall be inundated. To the mouth I shall give the harvest of the different divine flavors, and its voice shall harmonize above all the other blessed. To the works I shall give the harvests of my gifts, and so with all the rest." August 23rd, 1908. The sign to know whether there is guilt in the soul during the privation. Continuing in my usual state, I was very concerned about the state of my soul, and I said to myself, "Who knows what evil there is in my soul that the Lord deprives me of Him, and leaves me abandoned to myself?" At that moment He came for just a little and filled all of myself with Him, and my whole being was all directed to Him. There was not even a fiber or emotion that would not tend to Him. Then afterwards He told me, "Have you seen, my daughter? The sign that there is guilt in the soul when she finds herself without me is that as I return to let myself be seen, she does not remain all filled with God, nor is her being immediately disposed to immerse itself completely in me, in such a way that not a fiber would be left that is not fixed in its center. Where there is guilt, or something that is not completely mine, neither can I fill her, nor can the soul immerse herself in me. Guilt, matter, cannot enter into God, nor run toward God. Therefore calm yourself, and do not want to trouble yourself. August 26, 1908. Constancy in good makes divine life grow in the soul. As I was in my usual state, I was all afflicted and almost dazed because of the usual privations. Then he came, just in passing, and told me, "My daughter, that which I want you to take to heart is constancy in good, both internal and external, because the repetition of the act of loving me, of many interior acts, and of constant good, makes divine life grow evermore in the soul, but with such energy that she can be compared to a child who, growing in good air and with healthy foods, keeps growing well, in full health, until he reaches his proper stature, without needing either doctors or medicines. Even more, he is so robust and strong that he relieves and helps others. On the other hand, one who is not constant grows like a child who is not always fed with healthy foods and lives in putrid air. He grows sickly, and since his members do not have the strength to develop and grow due to lack of good nourishment, they develop with defects. And so a tumor forms in one place, an abscess in another. He walks with a limp. He speaks with difficulty. One can say that he is a poor cripple. Though one can see good members mixed in, those with defects are more. And even though he consults doctors and takes medicines, they do him little or no good, because his blood is infected by the putrid air, and his members are weak and defective from malnutrition. So he shall be a man, but he shall not reach a proper stature, and shall always need help, without being able to help others. Such is the inconstant soul. With inconstancy in good, it is as if the soul nourished herself with foods that are not good, and by applying herself to other things that are not God, it is as if she breathed putrid air. So divine life grows with difficulty and poorly, because it lacks the strength and the vigor of constancy. September 2nd, 1908. True virtue begins in God and ends in Him. I am going through bitter days because of the continuous privations of blessed Jesus. He came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, the sign to know whether one has true charity is that he loves the poor. In fact, if he loves the rich and is available for them, he may do so because he hopes for something, or obtains something, or because he is in sympathy with them, or because of their nobility, intelligence, eloquence, and even out of fear. But if he loves the poor, helps them, supports them, it is because he sees in them the image of God. Therefore he does not look at roughness, ignorance, rudeness, misery. Through those miseries, as though through a glass, he sees God, from whom he hopes for everything. And so he loves them, helps them, consoles them as if he were doing it to God himself. This is the good kind of true virtue that begins from God and ends in God. On the other hand, that which begins from matter produces matter and ends in matter. As bright and virtuous as charity may appear, if the divine touch is not felt, both one who does it and one who receives it become bothered, annoyed, and tired, and if necessary they even use it to commit defects. September 3rd, 1908. Jesus is light, and light is truth. As I was in my usual state, blessed Jesus made himself seen, all light, and said these simple words: I am light. But what is light made of? What is the principle of it? It is truth. So I am light because I am truth. Therefore, in order for the soul to be light, and to have light in all of her actions, these must come from truth. Wherever there is artifice, deception, and duplicity, there cannot be light, but darkness. And he disappeared like a flash. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 8, Part 4. Fiat.